Okay, think about this for a second. Counting on your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of the first things we learn, right? You see little kids doing it constantly.
Absolutely. Seems pretty basic.
But is it just basic? Like, is it just a childhood crutch we're supposed to outgrow?
Or is there something more fundamental going on?
Exactly. Could there be this, deep connection between our fingers and how we actually get our heads around numbers and math?
That's a brilliant question to kick things off.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it looks simple, almost automatic, but this relationship between fingers and arithmetic, it turns out surprisingly, well, complex and pretty fascinating.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're taking a really close look at finger use and arithmetic skills, mostly in kids and adolescents.
And we've got a great source for this deep dive.
We do. It's a big scoping review from the Educational Psychology Review. The title's pretty direct. Finger use and arithmetic skills in children and adolescents, a scoping review.
And the key thing here, for you listening, is that this isn't just one person's opinion. It's looking at, 75 different studies.
75, yeah, a massive overview. So it gives us a really broad picture of the research landscape.
So our mission today, basically, is to unpack what we currently understand or think we understand about this link.
Yeah, looking at the different perspectives, the key findings, and maybe more importantly, what questions are still hanging out there.
Definitely. So where do we start with these 75 studies? Do they all look at the same thing?
No, and that's one of the first big points the review makes. They pretty much fall into two main camps, two research areas.
Okay. What are they?
So first, you've got mathematical education research. About 29 studies fit in here.
Right. So focused on teaching and learning math.
Exactly. They were really looking at the kinds of finger strategies kids actually use, how they use their fingers to count or calculate, and how those strategies maybe help them get better at sums.
So very practical. What's happening in the classroom, essentially.
Pretty much. And the second group.
That was bigger 45 studies. And these came from cognitive psychology and neuroscience.
Ah, okay. So less about classroom strategies and more about the brain.
Yeah, more about the underlying stuff, the cognitive processes, what's going on in our heads, and the actual brain mechanisms that might connect fingers and arithmetic, the why and how it works at a biological level.
That's a really useful distinction. It's like one group is studying the techniques, the how-to, and the other is trying to figure out the wiring, the fundamental connection in our minds and brains.
You got it. And what's really striking, and the review authors point this out clearly, out of all those 75 studies, only one single study actually tried to bridge those two areas.
Wow, really? Just one?
Just one, which tells you, and this is important for you listening, that our understanding is still a bit fragmented. There's a real need for more research that connects the practical classroom stuff with the fundamental cognitive science.
That's a huge gap. Okay, so let's dig into the mathematical education side first, those 29 studies. What were they mainly trying to find out?
Well, their main goal was basically to identify and describe the different ways children use their fingers for math as they get older.
Like cataloging the strategies?
Yeah, mapping out how these finger strategies evolve. But not just what they were doing, also how these strategies actually seem to help them calculate. What is it about using fingers this way versus that way that helps a kid get the right answer?
Okay, so understanding the mechanics of how it helps. Did they figure out if some strategies are definitely better than others?
Ah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the review suggests, well, not really. Not conclusively, anyway.
Oh.
Yeah, they've observed and described lots of different strategies, but there's still a call for more research to pin down which specific ones are most effective for learning. It's likely not a simple answer.
Right. Different kids, different methods, maybe. Makes sense. Okay, let's shift over to the other side then, the cognitive psychology and neuroscience perspective. Those 45 studies, what were they digging into?
They were going deeper, trying to understand the fundamental mechanisms. So exploring cognitive processes, like how do we represent numbers mentally? What's this number sense people talk about?
And the brain connections.
And the brain connections, exactly. The neurobiology, what's actually happening in terms of brain activity when we use our fingers, or even just think about numbers in relation to our fingers, even if we're not physically moving them.
Okay, and what are the big takeaways from that line of research? What have they found about those underlying links?
Well, one really strong theme is this implicit connection between how our fingers are represented in the brain, the sensorimotor cortex areas, and how we process numbers.
So the part of the brain that knows about your fingers is somehow talking to the part that deals with numbers?
It seems that way. There appears to be some kind of mapping, even when we're not consciously using our fingers for counting.
Whoa. So hang on. Even if a kid has stopped, like physically putting their fingers up to count,
Hmm.
that early finger counting experience might still be shaping how they think about numbers later on, more abstractly.
That's a key theory, yeah. Some researchers talk about an internal finger representation
Yeah.
that sort of sticks around and keeps influencing numerical cognition.
That's really interesting. But you said earlier, despite all this research from both angles,
Right.
the actual benefit of using fingers is still debated.
Yeah, that's a crucial point the review makes. Even with 75 studies, there isn't complete consensus in the scientific community about how much, when, and for whom finger use is truly beneficial for learning arithmetic.
Seriously,
Yeah.
why is it still debated after so much research?
Well, it just shows how complex it is. You see lots of correlation. Kids who use fingers often show certain skills, but proving direct causation and figuring out the exact conditions where it helps most,
Yeah.
that's much trickier.
Okay, so it's not a simple yes, fingers are good or no, fingers are bad kind of situation.
Definitely not. It's way more nuanced than that.
So, given these different approaches and the ongoing debate, what did the review authors say were the biggest unanswered questions? What are researchers still really trying to figure out?
They highlighted three main ones. First, as we sort of touched on, which specific finger strategy, or maybe strategies, is actually the most effective for learning math?
Right. The practical, what should we teach question.
Exactly. We still need to nail that down.
Okay, what was the second big question?
The second one gets into the how. How do our fingers, sensorimotor skills, basically, how well we feel and move our fingers, our dexterity, how does that act as a bridge or a mediator between using finger strategies and actually developing arithmetic skills?
Okay, unpack that a bit. Sensor or motor skills.
Yeah, so it might not just be about seeing three fingers means three. It could also be about the physical feeling of moving those fingers, the fine motor control involved. Does that physical feedback somehow help the brain process the numbers better?
Ah, I get it. So the act of moving and feeling the fingers might be part of the learning process itself, not just a way to keep track.
Potentially, yes. It's about that connection between the physical action and the cognitive development.
Interesting. And the third major question.
The third one is maybe the most practical for teachers, parents, everyone involved in education. How should we actually use this knowledge? How should finger use be integrated into teaching, if at all?
Yeah.
Should we encourage it, discourage it after a certain point? Are there specific ways to use fingers that work best for, say, addition versus multiplication, or for different types of learners?
That really is the core challenge for educators, isn't it? What's the best practice? Sounds like the research hasn't given a clear manual yet.
Not a definitive one, no. It's
Okay.
still an active area. And, to make this more concrete for people listening, the review talks about lots of specific studies that feed into these bigger questions, but maybe we could mention a few examples.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into some specifics. That always helps make it real.
Okay, so for instance, some researchers looked at the different types of finger use right from the start in preschoolers.
Oh, really young then?
Yeah, seeing how those early ways of using fingers connect to their first grasp of numbers, their basic numerical reasoning.
And I saw something about finger patterns as tools for learning the basic meaning of numbers. That sounds intuitive.
It does, doesn't it? Like, holding up three fingers isn't just counting, it's a tangible way to understand threeness. It embodies the number.
Right. Makes it less abstract.
And then you get fascinating cultural differences, like there's a Korean finger counting method mentioned.
Oh, yeah. How does that work?
Well, apparently fingers get specific values. On the right hand, the thumb is 5, other fingers are 1. Left-hand fingers are 10 each.
Whoa, that's totally different from just counting one finger per number.
Completely. Which suggests culture really shapes how we use our hands to think numerically. It's not universal.
That could have really different cognitive effects, couldn't it? Depending on the system you learn.
You'd think so. Then there are studies that follow kids over time, longitudinal studies. Like one study tracked kids' calculation skills and their finger dexterity, their fine motor skills as they grew.
Ah, to see how those two things develop together.
Exactly. Do they influence each other? Does better finger skill predict better math? Or vice versa? Those studies are super valuable for understanding development.
Okay. And what about some of the more technical sounding ones? There was one on response effect compatibility of finger numeral configurations.
Yeah, that sounds like a mouthful. But the basic idea is about whether the specific way you hold your fingers for a number, like your typical way of showing 4, might subconsciously prime your brain or make it easier or harder to process the number 4 in a math problem.
So the physical shape your hand makes could actually interact with the mental processing of the number itself.
That's the idea they're exploring. A really deep, maybe automatic link between the physical representation and the cognitive one.
Wow. Okay. This research goes deep. And it's not just for basic counting, is it? I saw a mention of teaching multiplication using fingers.
That's right. Some methods extend finger use to multiplication, showing it's potentially more versatile than just for adding small numbers.
And the actual movement seems important too, not just holding up fingers. There was a study suggesting gesture is more than just keeping track.
Yeah, Ali Bali and Girusso back in '99, they argued the physical act of gesturing, the movement, might actually help solidify the numerical concepts themselves. It's part of the learning, not just an aid.
Okay, and then we get the brain studies,
Yeah.
like Andres and colleagues looking at motor circuits for counting and common brain areas, parietal cortex, you said, for both mental math and finger representation.
Uh-huh. That's the neuroscience evidence really pointing to that shared neural real estate. The fact that the same brain bits light up for both strongly suggests they're fundamentally intertwined in how our brains are organized.
That seems like pretty strong evidence for a deep connection, and that idea of offloading information onto fingers.
Yeah, Costa et al. Like using your fingers as a temporary notepad or external memory while you're working through a problem frees up mental space.
Right. Makes sense.
And even when kids stop visibly using their fingers, another study by Domas and colleagues suggested they might still have these internal finger-based representations influencing how they do calculations mentally.
Like a cognitive ghost you said earlier. The habit lingers internally.
Sort of. And Fisher's study linking preschool finger dexterity, just how nimble their fingers are to later numerical skills. That pushes the connection right back to early development. Basic motor skills might matter for later math.
Wow, even before formal schooling. And Jordan's study asking when do fingers help, that highlights the nuance again, doesn't it?
Exactly. It suggests the benefit isn't constant. It might depend on the type of math problem or where the child is in their learning journey. Context matters.
Okay. And then Newman and Soilu looked at finger counting habits in adults too, and whether finger sense predicts addition skill.
Yeah, that shifts things subtly. It's not just about the action of counting, but maybe this underlying awareness representation of your fingers, your finger sense, and how that relates to numbers, even without overt movement.
So, like, how well you mentally know where your fingers are and how they relate to quantity?
Kind of. And then Chincher's neuroimaging study is fascinating because it showed that even in adults, their old finger counting habits could actually change the activity in their motor cortex when they were just processing numbers, not even moving.
So the learned habit physically changed how their brain responds to a number.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
A really powerful link between a learned behavior and fundamental brain function.
It's amazing, really, how this thing we think is so simple, counting on fingers,
Yeah.
seems to have these incredibly deep roots in our cognition and even our brain structure.
It really is profound when you dig into it. And, the big conclusion from the authors of this review, after looking at all 75 studies, is that despite all this incredible work, we still need more research. We need to understand the complexities better and, crucially, figure out the best way to translate these findings into practical help for kids learning math in schools.
So wrapping it all up, the big takeaway for you listening seems to be that this finger number connection, it's way more complex and, well, deeper than it looks.
Absolutely. It's multifaceted, involves physical action, mental representation, brain activity. It's all tangled together.
And researchers are still actively trying to untangle it and figure out the best ways to apply that understanding in education.
Precisely. It's an ongoing story.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. Think about your own experience. Did you use your fingers a lot when you were learning math?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever find yourself now, maybe when you're calculating a tip or something, sort of subtly gesturing with your hands, even if you don't realize it?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does. What could that tell us about how we think about numbers? About this idea of embodied cognition? The notion that our physical bodies, our senses, our actions are fundamental to how we understand even abstract things like math. Definitely something to reflect on.
And if this has piqued your interest, dive deeper, look up some of these researchers or explore that whole concept of embodied cognition. It applies way beyond just math, and it's a really fascinating way to think about how we think.